Getting the watering right for your houseplant is essential to ensure it continues to live happily in your home. A lot of people are confused about how they should be watering their houseplant, which leads them to either killing their plant or avoid getting houseplants altogether, which is a real shame really. Getting the watering right for your houseplant shouldn't be a daunting experience so long as you avoid these 8 watering mistakes that you may be making and follow what you need to do to avoid making them. You should be fine. The most common watering mistake I see with houseplants is that people tend to overwater them. This comes from a misunderstanding of how often they should be watering their plants. They may be sticking to a regimented schedule and not taking into account the needs of their plant. Overwatering your houseplant means that you are watering your plant too frequently and not allowing the soil of the plant to dry out before watering again. This means that the soil is consistently soggy, and this is unhealthy for the plant's roots because there is potential for the plant to develop root rot. You really need to be checking the soil of your plant prior to watering it. This means sticking your finger 2 inches into the soil and checking whether it's dry. If the soil is wet, then leave it a few days and check again. Alternatively, you could invest in a moisture meter such as the one that I have. This is a fantastic little device that quickly and easily tells you exactly how moist the soil of your plant is. So there's a link to this moisture meter in a description. The second common mistake people make is underwatering. There are 2 possible reasons for this. Either we forget to water our plants because we're leading busy lives, which is totally normal, or we are fearful of overwatering our plants, which means that we veer too much to the side of caution. If we do have the overwatering fear, then the best thing to do is to invest in a moisture meter, as I've already explained, and this really helps understand the watering needs of our plants. You really don't want to be putting your plant through continuous periods of drought because this can damage the roots of the plants. This will lead to leaf drop, and in some plants you'll see browning edges on the leaves, such as with your calophyas. A lack of drainage is a particular problem in houseplants because if we have a plant in a pot, there is usually nowhere for the excess water to go. Putting your plant in a pot without drainage holes in the bottom means that excess water cannot leave the pot, and you risk overwatering your plant because the plant will often be sat in a puddle of water. I always keep my plants in plastic nursery pots that I then put into decorative pots so that I can empty the water that has drained into the decorative pot, and this keeps my plants from sitting in water. Common watering mistake number 4 is using just compost as a potting medium rather than a light free draining potting soil. The roots of your houseplants generally don't like to be compact and waterlogged, and compost tends to be far too dense for your plant's roots. You need to make sure that you are adding a substrate such as perlite to your compost to increase drainage of the soil. Without this, water will not drain freely from the soil when you risk overwatering your plant. You can of course buy a ready-made potting soil mix suitable for houseplants, or like me, you can make your own. I simply mix about 70% compost to 30% perlite, and that makes for a very happy houseplant. If you're potting up succulents, then I would increase this to maybe 50-50, but I would experiment yourself at home, guys. Watering your houseplants as much in the winter as you do in the summer is another mistake that you may be making. Houseplants aren't growing as much during the winter as they do in the summer, so they don't need as much water as in the summer to support their growth. Your plant's soil will also be drying out quicker in the summer due to evaporation in the warmer weather, and the leaves of your plant will also be transpiring more moisture in the summer too. This means they obviously need more water in the summer than in the winter, so just make sure you dial back the amount of water you give to your plants in the winter to avoid overwatering your plants. I water my plants about once a week in the summer, checking the individual plants beforehand, and then about once every 2 or 3 weeks in the winter, and this seems to be the sweet spot for my plants. Watering mistake number 6 that you may be making is watering your Echeveria the same as your Tradescantia. So an Echeveria is obviously a succulent, and a Tradescantia is a vining type plant. This means that both plants have completely different watering requirements, with succulents storing water in their thick leaves and needing less water because of that, and Tradescantias being quite a thirsty plant in my experience. So the thing here is to not treat all your plants in the same way, as this will lead to either underwatering or overwatering some of your plants. Overwatering succulents is a common problem that leads to people killing their plants, so only give it as much water as it needs. This next mistake is a mistake I think we're all making with at least a few of our houseplants, and that is not knowing what our houseplant is or what the name of our houseplant is. This is a mistake I often make, and it means that I do not fully know the care requirements for the plant. A kalanchoe, for example, is actually a succulent, and you'd probably not know that without looking it up online. This would lead you to overwatering the plant if you were to water it like your other houseplants. So succulents such as kalanchoes obviously need much less water than, say, a philodendron or a tradescantia, for example. I know that looking up all the plants you own online can be a bit of a time-consuming exercise, but it is a good idea to use something like Google Lens to identify your plants so that you can look it up and you can understand its needs. I would do this for any of your houseplants that you seem to be struggling with. Another watering mistake that you may be making is sticking to a tight watering schedule for all of your plants. You may have a certain day of the week, for example a Saturday or a Sunday, where you do all your houseplant chores and go through and water all of your plants in your house. This of course means that you're not checking the soil of your plant to see whether it actually needs water. Like I said, we need to be checking whether the plants need water, or otherwise we risk overwatering our plant. So either stick your finger into the soil or get yourself a moisture meter like I have and avoid the pain of having a suffering houseplant on your hands. Do you often kill your succulents and you're not really sure why? If you do, then it's usually an issue with watering. So if you want a full explanation of how and when to water your succulents, then click on the link over here for a full guide and I will see you there. Thank you very much for watching.